Chapter 41:13. Being rejected so blatantly, Du Fan was so angry that smoke almost came out of his head. He was too lazy to argue with Yi Feifei and said to Fingzhou, "Master, the porridge in front is ready to eat. And you two go together." Fingzhou stood up and said. He looked at the two of them and then walked forward. "Master, go ahead and eat first. We'll go later." Du Fan said and reached out to grab Yi Feifei, who was about to follow Fingzhou. Fingzhou looked back at the two of them and smiled. He then went ahead first. "What are you doing?" Yi Feifei tried to shake off the hand that was being pulled, but failed. "What am I doing?" Du Fan snorted and said, "Since you know what you've done, let's talk about how to deal with this matter." "What do you mean how to deal with it?" "I didn't bite you on purpose. Master also said that I was drugged." As she retreated, she struggled with all her might to retract her hand, but she was unable to do so. In the end, she could only grit her teeth and say, "Let go. If you have something to say, just say it. Don't pull and pull. You said that you took advantage of me. How do you want to take responsibility?" Du Fan did not want to pull her, but seeing her face full of disgust, he wanted to teach her a lesson. Yi Feifei heard this and was stunned. "Are you kidding me? Take responsibility. I'm a woman and you're a man. I'm the one who suffered, okay? I didn't even ask you to take responsibility and you still have the nerve to say it. Is that so? Then I'll go find Master and let her talk about it. Who was it that hugged me and did not let go, kissing and biting me? Who was it that kept saying that it was hot and kept sticking to me? Who was it that wanted to untie my belt and pull off my pants?" Du Fan's lips carried an evil smile as he stared at Yi Feifei. She retreated step by step, and he approached her step by step, forcing her to panic. She was out of her wits, and in the end, she fell onto the bench and sat in a daze. You. Yi Feifei's face turned red. Every time she heard him say a word, her heart would beat fast. She was embarrassed, flustered, and helpless. She actually hugged, kissed and bit him, unbuckling his belt and pulling off his pants again. Her face turned red, and she was so embarrassed that she wanted to find a hole to hide in. Seeing Du Fan approaching her step by step, she couldn't help but exclaim, "Ah! Don't say any more, don't say any more. I don't want to hear it." As soon as the sound came out, she jumped up, covered her ears, and ran into the room, slamming the door shut. Looking at the fleeing Yi Feifei, Du Fan snorted. He opened the fan in his hand and fanned himself from time to time. He glanced at the closed door and a victorious smile appeared on his face. Then, he walked forward briskly. After he walked to the front, Ling Shui walked out from the back corner. Seeing the closed door and Du Fan's light steps, her lips slightly raised and a smile flashed in her eyes. She thought to herself, "I didn't think that Du Fan and Yi Feifei would have this kind of fate. Looking at the situation, I believe that it won't be long before I hear good news about them." They planned to rest here until noon and then leave after lunch. However, in the afternoon, Fingzhou and the others had eaten and were walking in the backyard to digest their food when they heard the sound of crying coming from outside. Chapter 41:14. A few men carrying bows and arrows on their backs carried a man covered in blood back to the village. The man was motionless and his breathing was extremely weak. Beside him, a woman and 3 children were kneeling on the ground and crying. Their cries were helpless and forlorn, and those who heard them could not help but cry. The village wasn't big, and the villagers usually helped each other out. When they saw the man being carried back, covered in blood, they didn't know if he was dead or alive. The villagers all comforted the woman. Some of the elderly had already gone to the corner of the house to pick some herbs for treatment. They chewed the herbs and said, "This herb can stop the bleeding. Hurry and apply it on him. Send someone to the neighboring village to invite a doctor over. You guys, carry him into the house first." The old man shouted and ordered the men carrying bows and arrows to carry the man inside. Thus, a few of them wanted to carry the man down from the stretcher and back to his house. At this moment, they heard a gentle and pleasant voice. They could not help but stop what they were doing and turn around to look. "Wait a moment," Fengjiu said and walked over. When the villagers saw her, they automatically moved aside to make a path for her. Du Fan, Ling Shuang, and Yi Feifei followed behind her. At this moment, their gazes also fell on the man on the stretcher. "Miss, what's wrong?" An old man asked and looked at Fengjiu. "He's seriously injured. His wounds are not treated and bandaged properly. He can't take any more of your torment. If we carry him in from the stretcher, it's unlikely that he'll survive." As Fengjiu spoke, she glanced at the dying man. Her gaze shifted to the woman and her 3 children. Hearing Fengjiu's words, the old man paused for a moment. No one knew what he was thinking. At this moment, one of the men carrying bows and arrows glanced at Fengjiu and asked, "Who are you? His injuries are so serious. If we don't carry him back, are we going to leave him here until the doctor comes? Don't be rude." The old man shouted and glanced at the man who spoke. Then, he looked at Fengjiu and asked respectfully, "Miss, do you have a way to save him?" As he spoke, he paused and continued, "He has elders and children in his family. If he dies like this, I'm afraid his family will be miserable in the future. Since I've spoken, I naturally have a way to save him," Fengjiu said. She was the only one of the 3 who was skilled in medicine. Qi Naxian was not here, so she had to do it herself. "Go get a basin of water and some clean cloth." As Fengjiu spoke, she squatted down beside the man. After looking him up and down, she said, "Take a pair of scissors and cut his clothes open." Fengjiu, Fengjiu. "I'll cut it." Du Fan stepped forward, took the scissors, and cut open the man's clothes. Once the clothes were cut open, all the wounds on the man's body were clearly visible. "Master, what should I do? Tell me, and I'll do it." Du Fan looked at Fengjiu as she spoke. "Clean up the wound first. Apply some hemostatic medicine on the bleeding that needs to be stopped. As for the wound from the shoulder to the chest, it's more serious. Let me take care of it," Fengjiu said as her gaze fell on the man's chest. Chapter 41:15. Here's the water. A woman brought over a bowl of clean water and placed it beside Fengjiu. After Fengjiu expressed his thanks, he first washed his hands, then took out something from his space to clean the man's wound and apply medicine. Seeing that the man was on the verge of death, she fed him a pill and had someone bring him into the house. Once inside, she had everyone else leave, leaving only Du Fan to help by her side. "Master, can he still survive with such injuries?" Du Fan asked, his gaze falling on Fengjiu. In this remote village, with such serious injuries, if he did not have the best medicine, even if his master gave him a pill, it would be very difficult for him to recover. "He's lucky to have met me. If it were anyone else, it would be difficult for them to survive." As Fengjiu spoke, he reached out his hand and placed it on the man's most serious wound, urging the green lotus energy in his body to heal him. Du Fan watched from the side, his eyes flashing when he saw spots of green light emanating from his master's palm. He watched as the green light sprinkled from his master's palm into the man's wound, healing it bit by bit. Seeing that the wound was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye, and his master's forehead was also covered in sweat, he could not help but feel a jolt in his heart. They weren't related to this man in any way. In fact, Master didn't have to save him like this. Using the power of the green lotus to save this man would consume a lot of Master's spiritual energy. He didn't expect Master to save him like this. Originally, he was wondering if this man could survive, but looking at the current situation, it was not a problem for him to survive. Seeing that the wound was gradually healing, Fengzhou withdrew his hand. Perhaps it was due to the healing of the wound, the originally unconscious man's eyelashes fluttered slightly, and he slowly opened his eyes. He only saw a fairy-like woman dressed in red standing by the bed, and he seemed to see a pure and holy light emanating from her body. He wanted to take a closer look, but his heavy eyelids gradually closed, and his vision fell into darkness again, and he fainted again. Tie gauze around his wound. Fengzhou said, indicating for Du Fan to come forward and tie gauze around the already healed wound. After all, if such a serious wound healed so quickly, there would be a lot of trouble if word got out. Yes. Du Fan said, and went forward to tie gauze around the already healed wound. Let's go. Fengzhou said, and walked out. Du Fan followed behind, and they left the room together. How is it? Miss? How is my man? Is he still alive? Is he going to die? The crying woman quickly came forward with the 3 children, and looked at Fengzhou with teary eyes. Fengzhou smiled slightly, and softly comforted her, "Don't worry, he's fine. It's just that his injuries are a little serious, so he's still unconscious. You can go in to see him, but try not to disturb his rest." Hearing this, the woman cried out her thanks, and quickly walked in with the children. Chapter 41:16. The old man was taken aback and asked uncertainly, "Miss, are you saying not to tear it apart for half a month? Won't it get infected?" Fengzhou smiled and said, "It won't, I used good medicine." If it was anyone else who said this, the old man and the others probably wouldn't believe it. However, since it was this young lady who exuded a noble aura, he believed it from the bottom of his heart. Thus, he didn't even have any doubts as he nodded and replied, Okay, I'll remember it. I'll tell them. If the dressing is not changed for half a month, the wound will probably rot. A man with a bow on his back said with a frown. He didn't quite believe Fengzhou's words. After sizing her up, he said, "He's so badly injured. We don't even know if he can be saved." Now, you're saying that his wounds can be healed without changing his dressing. Who are you trying to fool? Fengzhou smiled and did not explain further. Instead, she glanced at the man who spoke and asked, "Did you go out to hunt? What kind of prey caused you to be so badly injured?" Among these men with bows and arrows on their backs, other than the one lying on the ground on his last breath, the others who carried him back were also covered with wounds of various sizes. Furthermore, their bodies were stained with both human and beast blood. They were in a sorry state. However, to be able to carry such a heavily injured comrade back in such a situation, these people were quite loyal. When they heard her question, the men's expressions turned ugly and angry. Seeing this, Fengzhou raised her brows. When the old man saw that Fengzhou asked them but they did not answer her question, he stepped forward and said, "Hurry up and say something. The young lady is asking you a question. What was going on? How did you get so badly injured?" The old man was an elder in the village and his words carried some weight. Seeing that the old man was urging them, one of the men said, "We went hunting but did not expect to meet a group of aristocratic family members. They brought their contracted beasts and stopped us. They played tricks on us and even let their contracted beasts injure us. If it wasn't for one of the young ladies who kept persuading us, we probably wouldn't have made it back alive." Fengzhou nodded in realization. It turned out that he had met a hedonistic son of a rich family. Some aristocratic families did indeed rely on their family's background and power to look down on human lives. Especially the lives of people without power and influence like them. In the eyes of those people, they were like ants and did not care about them at all. She shook her head inwardly and sighed. She looked to the side and said, "Du Fan, leave 2 bottles of medicine for them. Let them treat their wounds." With that, he walked away. "Yes." Du Fan complied, then took out 2 bottles of medicine from his space and handed them to the old man, saying, "Old man, have someone clean their wounds and apply some medicine. We'll take our leave now." "Thank you, thank you." The old man took the 2 bottles of medicine and hurriedly thanked them as he went out to see them off. It wasn't until he saw them get on the spirit deer carriage that he whispered, "This time we met a benefactor." "Elder, who are they?" one of the men asked. Seeing the spirit deer run and fly into the sky not long after, he could not help but be surprised. Chapter 41:17. The old man's eyes were filled with emotion. He looked up at the sky and slowly said, "They are passers-by, but also our benefactors." As he spoke, he lowered his head to look at the 2 bottles of medicine in his hands. Looking at the exquisite medicine bottles, his hand moved and he saw a square mark at the bottom of the bottles. "Ghost Doctor." The old man softly muttered, somewhat puzzled. "Ghost Doctor." A man at the side was startled when he heard this and quickly said, "Let me see." The old man saw his excited expression and handed the bottle to him, asking, "You've heard of the Ghost Doctor?" "I've heard of it, I've heard of it. A while ago, the people in the city kept talking about the Ghost Doctor Fingzhou. It said that she's not from this mainland, but is the ruler of another mainland. He's also the master of the heaven and earth of our continent." The man was a little excited. His eyes looked at the special mark at the bottom of the bottle in disbelief. "It really is the Ghost Doctor, it really is the Ghost Doctor. Could it be that the woman in red just now was the legendary Ghost Doctor Fingzhou? Heavens! I was so rude to her just now, I really..." Seeing the man so excited, the old man said, "We're in the village and don't know much about the outside world. Go, let's go back and talk. Tell us in detail, who exactly is this Ghost Doctor Fingzhou?" Thus, the group of people walked back and listened to the man tell them about the legend of the Ghost Doctor Fingzhou that had been spreading in the outside world. Fingzhou's spirit deer carriage flew in the sky. Fingzhou leaned against the spirit deer carriage and flipped through a medical book as she said, "Du Fan, let's rest in the nearest city for a night. I want to buy a few medicinal ingredients." Du Fan, who was driving the carriage, heard and replied, "All right." Looking down from high up in the sky, when he saw a town not far away, he drove the carriage down from the sky and landed on the ground. Then, the carriage gradually slowed down. "Master, are we going to enter the city like this?" Du Fan asked. He was mainly worried that if the spirit deer carriage entered the city, it would attract other people's attention. It wasn't that they were afraid of fighting with others, but they found it troublesome. After all, with their strength, not everyone was worthy of being their opponent. Fengzhou paused for a moment, then smiled and said, "Stop the car." Hearing the conversation inside, Du Fan pulled the reins and stopped the spirit deer carriage. He saw his master walk out and jump off the spirit deer carriage. "Du Fan, you and Lang Shuang take the spirit deer carriage to the grove and wait for me there. Fei Fei, come with me to the city to buy some things. We'll be back in a while." As she spoke, she glanced at Yi Fei Fei, indicating for her to follow her footsteps. Sigh, Master. Seeing his master bring Yi Fei Fei towards the city gate, Du Fan shook his head helplessly and said to Lang Shuang, "Do you want to follow? I don't feel safe leaving only Yi Fei Fei, that little girl, with us." Lang Shuang looked at him indifferently and said slowly, "No need. If Master wants me to stay, I'll stay. Besides, with Master here, nothing will happen." As she spoke, she sat beside the spirit deer carriage and said to Du Fan, "Let's go. Let's go to the grove and wait for Master." Seeing this, Du Fan could only drive the spirit deer carriage to the grove and wait. Chapter 41:18. Big brother, those 2 girls are really pretty. A tall and thin cultivator stared at Fingzhou and Yi Fei Fei with a sinister look. He looked at the 2 of them and grinned, revealing his yellow teeth. "That girl in the red dress is really beautiful. I've never seen such a beautiful woman." Another cultivator who was sitting at a tea stall and drinking tea had a cup of tea in his hand. He rested his elbow on the table and stared at Fingzhou while drinking tea. His eyes flashed with a light as if he had found a prey. This girl is good. Not to mention sending her to the underground black market, even if she was given to some big shot as a cultivation vessel, no one would reject her. The male cultivator said as he watched them walk on the street and finally enter a shop. Big brother, I heard that the West City's Deng family's second master recently spread the news that he's looking for stunning female cultivators. Look at these two. Another male cultivator beside him asked with an eager expression. For a beauty like that, even if he couldn't eat her, he could still grab her and do it with her. These two little beauties look like they're not from here. If they're not from here, there won't be anyone around them. This matter will be much more difficult. The man in the lead said and waved his hand, indicating for the people beside him to come closer. When they saw him, they immediately went forward. After listening to his plan in their ears, they looked at each other and grinned sinisterly. They hurriedly replied, "Don't worry, big brother. We'll handle this matter properly. You two, go. Keep an eye on those two. Don't let them slip away." The man ordered and signaled for the two to keep an eye on them. Okay. The other two responded and quickly went to the shop. At this time, Fingzhou didn't leave after buying the things in the shop. Instead, she borrowed a corner of the shop and sat down at a small tea table in the corner to mix things. Yi Feifei followed beside her and watched. She didn't know why she bought these things and why she added herbal juice to mix them. Seeing her fiddling there, she sat at the side and watched for a while before getting up and walking around. However, when she stood in front of the shop and looked at the bustling street outside, her gaze couldn't help but waver. She calmly glanced at the person who was staring at her from outside the shop and pretended that nothing had happened as she returned to the shop. She wanted to talk to Fingzhou about it, but when she saw that she was still concentrating on the concoction, she resisted the urge to speak. It was not until about the time it took for a stick of incense to burn when she kept everything away that she asked, "Mistress, is the concoction done? What are these for?" Fingzhou smiled and said, "Mix some paint and dress up the two purple gold spirit deer." Hearing this, Yi Feifei looked outside and said, "Master, there are people watching us from outside." "I've been watching since we entered the city," Fingzhou said as he glanced at her and smiled. "Do you want to play?" "Aw. Play what?" Yi Feifei was startled. "Go, ask the shop owner to bring a few more brushes." Fengzhou gestured. "Okay." Yi Feifei replied and asked the shop owner to bring a few more brushes. After paying, she followed Fengzhou out. However, she didn't leave the city directly. Instead, she walked around the city and bought 2 pieces of sesame seed cake and passed one to her. Chapter 41:19. Fengzhou walked forward while eating a sesame seed cake and said, "I'll bring you to practice." "Practice?" Yi Feifei was startled. "Yes. Why else do you think I brought you into the city?" Fengzhou glanced at her with a faint smile and walked forward with light steps. The more he walked until he entered a deserted alley. "Hee, looks like the beauty knows that we're watching you." The leading male cultivator walked out and looked at Fengzhou with a pair of evil eyes with a sneer. Fengzhou just glanced at the people blocking the entrance of the alley and said to Yi Feifei, "Go and practice." Yi Feifei looked at them and saw that they were stronger than her. Moreover, they had the advantage in terms of physique. If she went forward, she would be defeated in 3 moves. However, since it was her master's order, she could not disobey. She knew that with her master here, even if her life was in danger, her master would help her. Thus, she gritted her teeth and walked forward. When the male cultivators saw this, they were amused. They looked at each other and laughed, "Yo! The little beauty wants to fight with us. That's not good, right? They say that fists and feet have no eyes." If we hurt your beautiful face, it won't look good. You guys should suffer less. Before the male cultivator could finish speaking, Yi Fei rushed forward and a dagger slipped from her sleeve into her palm. She attacked him at a speed that was too fast for one to cover their ears. Although her attack was unexpected, the other party was stronger than her and had faster reaction speed. Therefore, when she attacked, the other party avoided the attack and counterattacked at the same time. TSK. Little beauty, you're still too young to hurt me. As the male cultivator spoke, his hand turned into a claw and grabbed at Yi Fei's chest. There was no need to talk about the attack, but the technique he used seemed to be taking advantage of Yi Fei. When the other male cultivators saw this, they winked and smiled evilly. Yi Fei was enraged. The dagger in her hand once again attacked, stabbing towards the man's shoulder. Who would have thought that her attack would be suppressed by the man? One of her hands was caught. Seeing the male cultivator's other hand reach towards her chest, her eyes immediately turned red. Fengzhou's eyes glinted coldly when he saw this. These people were even more despicable than she had imagined. Her eyes flashed and she moved her finger. A silver needle shot out and hit the male cultivator's hand that was about to grab her. Hiss! The male cultivator sucked in a breath of cold air from the pain. He felt his palm tingle with numbness, and he couldn't help but tremble. Yi Fei seized the opportunity and threw the dagger in his hand down. He caught it with his other hand and ruthlessly stabbed it into the man's thigh. The sound of the sharp blade stabbing into the thigh was heard. At the same time, blood gushed out and the man screamed in pain. Ah! He was in so much pain that he bent over. He instinctively wanted to fight back, but Yi Fei had given him a chance. He had no time to fight back. After the dagger was pulled out, Yi Fei stabbed him in the shoulder again. Cold sweat poured out of the male cultivator's forehead. The numbness and pain in his palm made his hand tremble helplessly. He was unable to fight back. The stab to his thigh had almost pierced through it. Blood flowed out. He was in so much pain that he couldn't even stand, let alone the stab to his shoulder. Scum! Chapter 41:20. The few people at the side recovered from their shock and called out in a low voice, "Big brother." They hurriedly went forward to help him up. Two of them were unable to restrain their anger and threw punches at Yi Fei, cursing, "Stupid woman. You're courting death." Yi Fei dodged the other party's punch towards her face, but she couldn't avoid the other party's kick. Her lower abdomen was kicked and she groaned, her whole body also followed by a few steps back. Catch her for me. I want to kill her." The male cultivator who was helped to the side said sinisterly. He gritted his teeth, his body trembling slightly due to the injuries on his body. A male cultivator discovered that there was a needle in his hand, and only a small part of it was exposed. He couldn't help but say, Big brother, why is there a needle in your hand? That woman plotted against me." The male cultivator who was helped to sit in the corner of the alley panted and shouted angrily, "Pull out the needle for me and help me bandage my wound, quick." On the other side, they helped to bandage that person's wound and wanted to pull out the needle in his hand. However, because the needle pierced very deep into the flesh and there were no sharp iron clamps or the like around to clip it out, they couldn't pull out the silver needle even after a long time. On the other side, after Yi Fei was kicked, she took a deep breath, endured the pain and went forward to attack again. Fengzhou watched from the side and didn't go forward to help. Instead, he watched her attack for a while, then used his divine sense to guide her. The opponent's speed is fast, so you have to be faster than him. In battle, you have to find the opponent's weakness and attack it. Hearing the voice in her mind, Yi Fei calmed down and attacked while looking for the opponent's weakness. In addition to her master's advice, she quickly discovered that the opponent wasn't very good at close combat. Thus, she tried her best to get close to the opponent to fight. Because she was close, the opponent couldn't use his fists and feet. Instead, he was cut by her dagger in a few places. However, after another person joined in, the situation of 1 against 3 gradually put her at a disadvantage. Not only was she unable to get close to them, her attacks were also blocked. "See if I don't kill you," the tall and thin male cultivator roared, as he punched towards Yi Feifei's abdomen. But at the moment he punched out, a ring on his finger flashed with a cold light under the sunlight. Fingzhou, who was watching from the side, was caught by the cold light. She looked at the man's fist, and when she saw the sharp blade on the ring, she frowned. With a wave of her sleeve, a red blade shot out and pulled Yi Feifei back. "Master." Yi Feifei turned to look at her with a confused expression. "It's about time," Fengzhou said. As soon as his voice fell, the red silk in his hand flicked and sent the few people who had rushed forward flying. Hiss! The few of them cried out in pain as they were sent flying. They crashed into the wall and rolled to the ground. The blood and qi in their bodies were in a mess, causing them to spit out mouthfuls of blood. "Go! Let's go!" Their faces changed, and they were so shocked that they wanted to flee. However, how could Fengzhou let them escape when she made a move? With a flick of her finger, several silver needles flew out and shot into the acupoints on their bodies. Their bodies stiffened, and they all fell to the ground with a groan. Chapter 41-21. "Yes!" Yi Feifei responded and immediately stepped forward. Gathering spiritual energy in her palm, she slammed it towards one of the men's dantian, shattering his inner core. Bang! With a bang, the man who had fainted woke up from the pain. His eyes widened in shock and he opened his mouth, only to spit out mouthfuls of blood. As his spiritual energy gradually dissipated, his appearance rapidly aged. With the first one, it was even easier to deal with the second one. Adding on the fact that these people were despicable and vicious, she wouldn't even blink an eye if she killed them, let alone crippling their cultivation. "No, no. Don't cripple my cultivation, don't cripple my cultivation." The male cultivator who was the leader woke up and his face was pale with fright. At this moment, he no longer had the arrogance and viciousness from before, only fear and panic remained. For people like them, crippling their cultivation was crueler than killing them. They had made so many enemies, without strength to protect themselves, who knew what kind of fate they would end up in. "It's too late." As Yi Feifei spoke, she crushed their inner cores one by one. When it was the last one's turn, she held the dagger in her hand and said, "As for you, not only will I cripple your cultivation, I'll also cripple your hands." With that, she raised the dagger in her hand and stepped on the man's hand, breaking the tendons in his hands and feet. As he screamed, she crippled his cultivation. Looking at the people who were screaming on the ground, she lightly snorted and stood up to look at Fengzhou. "Master, their cultivations have been crippled. Take their valuables and let's go," Fengzhou said, indicating for her to take the spoils of war. "Yes." Yi Feifei responded and went forward to take their things, then handed them to Fengzhou. "Just take them. Later, let Leng Shuang or Du Fan help you pick out the useful ones and sell the useless ones at the next place," Fengzhou said as he slowly walked out of the alley. "Okay." Yi Feifei smiled and put the things away. The two walked out of the alley into the main street and slowed down. Fengzhou looked at her and asked, "How are your injuries?" It's fine. I was just kicked twice, it's not a big deal." As Yi Feifei spoke, she looked at the busy main street and smiled. "Master, are we going back to the spirit deer carriage now? Are we still going to enter the city later?" Fengzhou walked slowly and replied, "Yes, we'll rest in this city tonight. Later, we'll find a good inn to stay in. We'll come out in the evening to buy some things for the journey and some dry food to store." The two walked and chatted as they headed out of the city. In a small forest outside the city, Du Fan and Ling Shuang sat in the spirit deer carriage to rest. Looking at the sky and seeing that their master had not returned, they couldn't help but worry. Ling Shuang, you wait here and guard the spirit deer carriage. I'll go out and see if master and the others are coming back. Du Fan said and jumped out of the spirit deer carriage. He stroked the spirit deer's head with one hand and patted it before walking out along the small path. Ling Shuang was sitting in the spirit deer carriage with his eyes closed. When he heard Du Fan's words, he opened his eyes to take a look and then closed them again to rest. Chapter 41-22. Master, did you encounter any problems? Du Fan stepped forward and asked. She looked at the two and saw that there was nothing different about her master, but there were 2 footprints on Yi Feifei's dress. Feng Jiu smiled faintly. We met a few ruffians, so I had Feifei practice and crippled those people's cultivation. She walked forward and said, let's go. I brought the things back, so after we're done, we'll go to the inn and have a good rest. Good. Du Fan responded and looked at Yi Feifei. Then she led them to the spirit deer carriage. When they arrived at the spirit deer carriage, Feng Jiu looked at Yi Feifei and said, you go to the carriage and rest. See if you need to apply some medicine and let Ling Shuang help you. I'm fine, master, there's no need to apply medicine. Yi Feifei said and then asked, Master, are the pigments you mixed for the 2 deer? Yes, I'm giving them a change of color so that they won't attract people's attention. Feng Jiu smiled and took something out from the space. She took out 2 brushes and handed one to Du Fan. Here, take it and apply it with the pigments in this bottle. Du Fan was stunned for a moment. She looked at the things in her hand and then looked at the 2 purple gold spirit deer. Then she looked at Feng Jiu and asked, Master, you mean to use these to change their color? Yes, I specially mixed it so that the color won't fade easily and it won't hurt them. She said and took out a handful of gold coins from the space and gave them to the 2 purple gold spirit deer to eat. This was the first time Yi Feifei saw the 2 purple gold spirit deer eat gold coins and couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Master, they eat this? Isn't this too expensive? Hiss. They even eat crystal cores. Seeing her master even give the 2 deer the crystal cores of vicious beasts to eat, Yi Feifei couldn't help but suck in a breath and stare with wide eyes. Yes, they're picky. They like to eat these and won't eat anything else. Feng Jiu said with a smile. He stroked the deer's head with one hand and gestured to Du Fan, hurry up, we'll go into the city to rest after we're done. Yes. Du Fan came back to his senses and dressed the 2 purple gold spirit deer according to her instructions. After a while, he let out a sigh of relief. Looking at the 2 purple gold spirit deer that had completely changed, he couldn't help but smile. All right, master, take a look. Feng Jiu was also helping at the side. At this moment, he also stopped writing and looked at the 2 spirit deer, then revealed a satisfied smile. Not bad, this is very good. Okay, pack up, let's enter the city. With that, she put away the rest of the paint, washed her hands, and sat in the spirit deer carriage. Seeing this, Du Fan let them all get in, then jumped on the carriage and drove the 2 spirit deer into the city. Arriving in the city, they found a good inn to rest. Du Fan entered the inn and asked the waiter to prepare the meal first, while Ling Shuang said at this time, I'm not hungry yet, I want to go into the city to buy some things first. I'll go with you. Feng Jiu said with a smile, I still have elixirs to buy, I can eat them later. With that, she looked at Du Fan and said, the 3 of us will go, you can rest here first. What do you want to eat? Let the waiter prepare it for you. With that, she flew out with Ling Shuang and Yi Feifei. Master. Du Fan called, but saw her waving her hand without looking back, and took the 2 to the street. Seeing this, he helplessly shook his head. Chapter 41-23. It was not that he wanted to think this way, but no matter where his master went, big and small things would happen. This was not the first day. Over time, he could imagine it even with his toes. However, there was no need to worry about them. With Ling Shuang's strength and his master's strength, even if Yi Feifei's strength was not good, there would not be any problems. He smiled and gently fanned himself with the fan in his hand. After glancing at the spirit deer carriage parked outside, he waved his hand and called, "Waiter, prepare a few dishes for me and a pot of wine." "Okay." The waiter answered and went forward to greet, "Young master, come and sit at this table. This table can see the street outside. The scenery is the best." Du Fan smiled and threw a gold coin to the waiter. "This is for you. Go and get some water for my two deer. Also, the carriage is parked there. Keep an eye on it." Yes, thank you, young master." The waiter answered happily. While thanking him, he put away the gold coin. Full of joy, he asked the waiter to prepare a few signature dishes and wine, and then went to get some water to feed the deer. On the other side, Fengjiu was walking on the street with Ling Shuang and Yi Feifei. The three people's outstanding appearance and temperament naturally attracted the attention of others. Some men were fascinated by them and showed a lecherous smile. Their eyes looked up and down at the three people's figures with a bit of evil intent. There were also people who bumped into the wall while walking and screamed in pain. The ugliness of human nature was everywhere. The three people walked calmly. They had seen too many people looking at them like this, so they naturally did not care. "Miss, do you want to buy a few meat dumplings to try? This old woman made them herself. They are very delicious." An old woman wearing patched clothes was guarding a stove. There was a dumpling on the lid of the pot on the stove. Traces of heat seeped out of the pot, revealing the fragrance of the dumplings. Fengjiu stopped and looked at the old woman. He smiled and said, "Then give us 4 dumplings." Good. The old woman was very happy. She quickly took off the dumplings on the lid of the pot and put them aside, saying, "I'll get the hot dumplings for you. The dumplings in the pot are still hot." Fengjiu saw that she took out 4 steaming dumplings from the pot and tied them together with a straw rope. She asked, "Old woman, where is the biggest medicine shop in the city?" "Medicine shop? The biggest one isn't here. You can walk along this street, turn left at the end, and then turn right at the 3rd intersection. That's our biggest medicinal herb shop. It has everything. Sometimes I go there to sell zongzi, so I'm familiar with this road." While speaking, he reached out and took the dumplings. At the same time, he stuffed a gold coin into the old woman's hand. "Old woman, take it. Keep the change." The old woman was stunned for a moment. She lowered her head to take a look, then hurriedly closed her palm and said, This is too much." Chapter 41-24. Seeing the 3 of them leave with the dumplings, the old woman moved her lips. She wanted to call out to them, but she was worried that her words would attract other people's attention. After all, there were still hooligans on the street. At that moment, she dared to take out the gold coin, but she hid it in her shoe while bending down to take the dumplings. Ling Shuang took the dumplings in Fengjiu's hand and put them into his space. The 3 of them walked according to the old woman's directions until they arrived at a very stylishly decorated shop. "Ladies, do you want to buy medicinal herbs? You can come to our shop to have a look. We're the largest medicinal herb shop in the city. We have all kinds of medicinal herbs." An apothecary hurriedly greeted Fengjiu and the others when he saw them. Fengjiu walked in with the other 2 following behind her. As soon as she entered, she saw that there were many people buying medicinal herbs. Moreover, the smell of various medicinal herbs in the air assailed her nostrils. She walked to the cabinet in front and looked at the medicinal herbs on display. Then, she asked, "Where are your spiritual herbs?" "The spiritual herbs are on the 2nd floor. Ladies, please go upstairs." the apothecary said and invited her to the stairs. At this moment, a middle-aged man walked up and looked at the three of them without batting an eyelid. Finally, his eyes fell on Fengjiu. "I'm the shopkeeper of this shop. Ladies, please come with me." The middle-aged man smiled politely and bowed slightly to invite them upstairs. Fengjiu glanced at him and walked up to the second floor. Ling Shuang and Yi Feifei quietly followed behind her. Compared to the liveliness on the first floor, there were fewer people on the second floor. However, most of the people on the second floor were cultivators or people dressed in luxurious clothes. Perhaps because the shopkeeper personally brought them upstairs, many people who were looking at medicinal herbs turned their heads to look. When their eyes fell on Fengjiu and the others, even these people's eyes flashed with a trace of amazement. However, they quickly retracted their gazes and shifted their gazes away. They didn't go overboard in sizing them up or acting presumptuously. After all, based on their experience, these three women with outstanding appearances and temperaments should have a great background. Among the three of them, it was obvious that the beautiful woman in red was the leader. Not to mention the woman in red, there was also the woman in black who was following behind her. Her black clothes were neat and elegant, and her temperament was cold and intimidating. They originally wanted to see her strength, but unexpectedly, with their cultivation, they were unable to see through her cultivation. From this, it could be seen that she was very strong. As for the woman in a sky-blue dress beside her, her temperament was elegant and outstanding. She was like a young lady of a noble family, the one that they didn't dare to look directly at. The woman in red had a faint smile on her beautiful face. The corners of her lips were slightly raised, and her entire body exuded a sense of casualness and freedom. Her every move had a faint noble aura, which made people not dare to look too deeply into her. Chapter 41-25. Fengjiu glanced at it and asked, "Do you have earthly spirit grass?" The shopkeeper was startled and said, "Yes." As he spoke, he walked to a counter and opened a cabinet. He took out a stalk of earthly spirit grass and placed it on a tray. "Miss, take a look at this medicine. This is a batch that just arrived the day before yesterday. How many earthly spirit grass do you have?" Fengjiu walked forward and asked. He picked up the earthly spirit grass and looked at it before putting it down. Hearing this, the shopkeeper called over a pharmacist and asked him. He then said to Fengjiu, "Besides the one that was sold yesterday, we have 49 stalks in our shop." Fengjiu nodded and asked, "I want all of them. What's the price?" The shopkeeper was startled and somewhat astonished. All of them?" "Yes." Fengjiu replied and said, "I want all of them. It should be cheaper, right?" "This. I have to ask my master about this." "Miss, why don't you sit for a while and have a cup of tea first?" As he spoke, he invited Fengjiu to sit down and asked someone to serve tea. He then hurried downstairs and walked to the backyard. Seeing that he was also waiting here, Yi Feifei rolled her eyes and said, "Master, I want to buy something." Fengjiu glanced at her and said, "Then let Ling Shuang accompany you." There's no need. Ling Shuang will go with me. Master will be alone here." Yi Feifei hurriedly waved her hand and said, "I won't go far. It's just outside on the street." "It's fine. Ling Shuang has nothing to do here. I'll go with you. I'll wait for you here." Fengjiu said and took a sip of tea. He said, "Come back here and find me in a while. Go. Come back early and don't cause trouble." "Yes." Ling Shuang replied and glanced at Yi Feifei, saying, "Let's go. Then we'll be back in a while." "It won't be long," Yi Feifei said with a smile, and then went downstairs with Ling Shuang. Downstairs, Ling Shuang asked, "What do you want to buy?" Yi Feifei said a little embarrassedly, "When I came over, I saw that they were selling wine, and there were a lot of people in front of the door. I thought that the wine there should be very fragrant, so I wanted to buy some for Du Fan. Hearing this, Ling Shuang was slightly surprised. You're buying it for Du Fan? Don't misunderstand. I heard from you that I fainted after being drugged. He was the one who carried me to the room and even brought me some water to make me a bath. I thought about how I didn't treat him well after that, and how I even bit his lips until now. That's why I wanted to buy him a bottle of wine and apologize to him. Speaking of this, she blushed slightly. She had always said that he took advantage of her and acted like a pervert, but when she thought about what Ling Shuang said to her, and how he was sure that he had taught her cultivation, she felt that she shouldn't have treated him like that. A smile flashed across Ling Shuang's eyes, but her face remained cold and expressionless. She said, yes, he must be a good drinker. He must drink a few cups when he's free. Let's go. I'll go with you. Thank you. Yi Fei thanked him with a smile. She said, actually, I can do it myself. It's just on the other side of the street. It's not far. This is a strange place. Master is worried that something might happen to you. Ling Shuang said and went with her to buy wine. On the second floor of the store, the shopkeeper brought a middle-aged man to Fengjiu and introduced him. Miss, this is our store's master. Chapter 41-26. Fengjiu smiled and gestured for him to sit down. After he sat down, she said, Boss Yu, I am only here to buy medicine. My name is not important. What I want to ask is, will it be cheaper to buy all of your earth spirit grass? Ha ha ha. The middle-aged man chuckled. He looked at Fengjiu and said, if it's just 1 or 2 stalks, it's naturally not a problem. However, since you want to buy all 49 stalks that I have in stock, I can naturally give you a discount. He paused and said, for each stalk, I can give you a discount of 100 gold coins. How about 1,200 gold coins for 1 stalk? Fengjiu smiled and said, Boss Yu is indeed a businessman. If you buy this earth spirit grass from the herb gatherers, it would at most cost 200 gold coins. If you buy it from other medicine shops, it would at most cost 250 gold coins. Now you want to sell it for 1,200 gold coins. And you say that this is already considered cheap. Although the two of them were some distance away from the counter, but to a cultivator, they did not deliberately lower their voices. Naturally, they heard their conversation. At this time, when they heard the price, they were slightly surprised. When Boss Yu heard Fengjiu's words, the smile on his face disappeared. He looked at her with more scrutiny and said, you are quite familiar with the market. But, you must know that not every medicine shop has this earth spirit grass. My price, even if you say it is expensive, it is also not expensive. Fengjiu didn't care about the money, but she couldn't let others take advantage of her. Hence, she smiled and said, that is natural. The earth spirit grass in this area have all been cut off. Only you sell it. Boss Yu also knows about medicine. You should know that the longer some medicine is stored, the more its medicinal properties will evaporate. The effect of the medicine will not be obvious. If you don't sell it to me and slowly sell it, who knows when these medicine will become useless. Her voice paused. Seeing that he was about to speak, she raised her hand to stop him. Of course, if you sell it to me, I won't let Boss Yu suffer a loss. How about 400 gold coins per stalk? He. Miss, your price is a little too low. Boss Yu's smile was cold and displeased. Fengjiu sipped his tea, his expression indifferent and casual. It's fine if Boss Yu doesn't want to sell. But, if you miss out on a customer like me, perhaps after today, you won't be able to sell your 49 stalks of earth spirit grass. Of course, Boss Yu is rich and doesn't lack these. However, if you want to do business for a long time, you still need to have good beer, right? When the person on the second floor heard this, his expression couldn't help but change as he looked towards Fengjiu. He was somewhat surprised that this girl dared to haggle with the boss of the trading firm, and also surprised that this girl knew the price of the earth spirit grass. In fact, they also knew that the trading firm had raised the price. Hence, after comparing the goods, even if the medicine wasn't available in this city, they would ask people to go to other cities to buy it. And the people who could sell the earth spirit grass were mostly those who urgently needed it. Boss Yu looked deeply at Fengzhou, took a deep breath and said, "Okay, I'll do this business with you." Boss Yu is indeed a straightforward person. Fengzhou smiled slightly. When Boss Yu heard this, the corner of his mouth twitched and he was somewhat speechless. Chapter 41-27. Hearing this, Fengzhou was slightly surprised. "Didn't she go with you?" She paused, stood up and asked, "What happened?" Ling Shuang's heart sank. "I went with her to buy wine, but there were a lot of people in that shop. A woman holding a child bumped into me, and I was hidden for a while. In just a while, Fei Fei disappeared." Boss Yu was slightly startled when he heard this. He didn't expect this to happen. He looked at the two of them, then thought of the woman from before. He seemed to have thought of something, and his brows furrowed. "Miss, did you offend someone in the city?" A male cultivator said, looking at Fengzhou, and kindly suggested, "If you offended someone, quickly follow this path, maybe you'll find her." Could she have gone back? Look around again, she's just a little girl, maybe she bought something and went back. Another male cultivator also said, telling them to go back and look for her. Fengzhou smiled at the two. "I'm still here, she won't go back first. She's probably been caught by someone. If that's the case, then it'll be troublesome. The powers in the city are complicated, it'll be even harder for you two girls to find someone. Do you have any relatives or good friends in the city? Quickly ask them to help you ask around." A middle-aged man in luxurious clothes slowly said, giving them some advice. "Thank you." Fengzhou nodded slightly in thanks, then said to Ling Shuang, "Go back to the inn and tell Du Fan to go out and ask around. If there's any news, come find me here." "Yes." Ling Shuang replied, and immediately went downstairs. Fengzhou looked at Boss Yu. "Boss Yu, wrap up those herbs for me and pay for them." "Okay, this way, miss." Seeing that she didn't seem to be worried, Boss Yu was a little surprised. He asked her to follow him to the counter on the second floor, and let the shopkeeper take out the herbs for her to count. After both sides paid, he couldn't help but ask, "Miss, you don't seem to be worried?" Fengzhou smiled, "No, I'm quite worried. After all, she's just a little girl, and she's inexperienced. I'm really worried that she'll cause trouble." Hearing this, Boss Yu paused, then asked, "Miss, do you have any relatives or friends in the city?" "No, we're just passing by. We plan to rest here for the night before leaving," Fengzhou said, and checked the herbs, then put them away. Hearing Fengzhou's words, Boss Yu inwardly, and shook his head. "The powers in the city is complicated, you don't have any relatives or friends here, and you don't have any relatives or friends." Fengzhou smiled, but didn't say anything. After putting away the herbs, she said, "I plan to wait here for my people. Boss Yu, you don't mind if I have another cup of tea, right?" "Of course, miss, please sit here," Boss Yu said with a smile, and asked someone to bring her another cup of hot tea. The person who bought the herbs on the second floor hadn't left yet. Seeing her sitting there calmly and drinking tea, he couldn't help but be surprised. But he didn't ask too much. On the other side, Du Fan, who was eating and drinking, put down the chopsticks in his hand, and took another sip of wine, thinking, why haven't the mistresses returned yet? Chapter 41-28. What's wrong? Why are you alone? Du Fan stepped forward and asked. Ling Shuang stopped and said, Fei Fei is missing. Master told me to come back and ask you to find out about the powers in the city, to see who would capture Fei Fei. Hearing this, Du Fan frowned and said, how could she be missing? Wasn't she with you? I went with her to buy wine, at that time. Ling Shuang told him what happened. Hearing her words, Du Fan thought for a moment and said, I know, then you come with me. We'll meet up with Master in a while. As he said this, he walked back to the inn and called for the waiter. Young master, what orders do you have? The waiter was previously rewarded with a gold coin and was full of joy. Now that he was called for, his face was full of eagerness. Du Fan took out 2 gold coins and placed them on the table, saying, I want to ask you about some things. If you answer well, these 2 gold coins are yours. Hearing this, the waiter's eyes lit up and he quickly asked, what does young master want to ask about? Needless to say, as the waiter of the inn, they were the most well-informed about all kinds of news. There was nothing that they didn't want to talk about. Du Fan and Ling Shuang looked at each other and the fan in his hand opened up. He slowly asked, let me ask you, how many powers are there in the city? Which one is the biggest? What were they mainly doing? Also, have you heard of any foreign beautiful women going missing in the city? On this side, they were asking for information. On the other side, the unconscious Yi Feifei also woke up. However, as soon as she opened her eyes, she saw a sack in front of her and felt that she was being carried by someone. She could also faintly hear voices. She couldn't help but be startled and stare blankly for a moment. Had she been caught? She remembered that when she was buying wine, someone suddenly hugged her from behind and covered her mouth and nose with a piece of cloth. She only knew that in the next moment, she fainted. When she woke up, she was already in the sack. What was this for? Why did he capture her? They had just arrived and had not provoked anyone, nor did they have any enemies. Why would they be targeted? Just as he was thinking about it, he heard voices. What a pity. If it weren't for the fact that the little girl in black doesn't seem to be easy to deal with, I really want to capture her as well. These 2 people can be sent to the underground black market to be auctioned off. I'm sure we can earn quite a bit of money. You still want to catch the one in black? If I hadn't sent someone to keep that black-clothed girl busy, we might not have been able to catch her. Another voice was heard. Not long after, the sound of the door opening could be heard. Why is it you again? The man who opened the door looked at the sacks on their shoulders, sneered, and asked, what did you bring this time? Hee, Grandpa Chow, we've sent another little beauty over. We just got her. She's definitely good stuff. Moreover, she's not from here. All right, come in. We'll have to see the goods first. The man gestured for them to enter. In the sack, Yi Feifei's eyes widened. Could it be that she was caught and sold? She was furious. She rolled her eyes and couldn't help but have an idea. Thus, she secretly adjusted her breathing and gradually calmed herself down. She continued to pretend to be unconscious. Chapter 41-29. When the sack was opened, the sleeping Yi Feifei's delicate and beautiful face was reflected in their eyes. Master Chow sized her up from top to bottom, and the more he looked, the more satisfied he was. And not bad indeed. Rare goods. The man said, then looked at the 2 men and said, 100 gold coins. Hearing this, the 2 men smiled embarrassedly and said, Master Chow, you also said that this goods is good. Isn't 100 gold coins too little? As he said this, he stretched out 2 fingers and said, 200 gold coins. You should know that there is a risk in accepting your goods. Moreover, I have to resell them. 150 gold coins, no more. As he said this, he clasped his hands behind his back and said, if you don't want to, you can take them away. You can't enter a place like the black market without connections. Other places also don't dare to accept people like you. Hearing this, the 2 men hesitated for a moment, then finally clenched their teeth and said, all right. We'll do as Master Chow says. Fortunately, when they succeeded, they took the chinkuan pouch and other valuables from the woman. They didn't see what was in the pouch, but they knew that it would be worth some money. Thus, the two sides straightforwardly handed over the money and the woman. Then, the two men took the gold coins and left. Master Chow clapped his hands, and in the next moment, two men in black appeared. Go, send the woman to the black market to Steward Chow. Yes. The two men in black responded, then put the woman back into the sack and took her away. Yi Feifei was once again sent to the underground black market. She only felt that the yellow bile in her stomach was about to be shaken out. It wasn't until she was sent to a room in the underground black market that she heard the person outside say that two servant girls were going to be sent over to help her wash up that she opened her eyes. Be careful and watch carefully. This goods will be auctioned tonight. The people outside said, leaving behind two guards to guard the door. She carefully peeked through the slit in the window and saw that there were two guards outside the door. Further away, there were more guards. Looking at the tall and sturdy bodies of the guards, she knew that if she went out, she would definitely be caught. Thus, she quietly went back to the room to take a look. Seeing that there was no place to escape, she finally thought about it and gave the hair ornaments on her head and the chinkuan pouch on her waist. However, the dagger hidden in her boots was still there, and the inconspicuous spatial ring on her finger was also there. However, when she looked at her finger that was wearing the spatial ring, those people must have wanted to take her ring when she was unconscious, but they couldn't, she put. You two go in and change her into this set of clothes. Help her wash up and serve her well. Yes. As soon as the voice from outside fell, the door was pushed open. Two women walked in with clothes in their hands. After glancing at Yi Feifei, they began to prepare hot water for his bath. When they were done, they stepped forward and said coldly, "Don't even think about escaping. Once you enter, you won't be able to escape." Chapter 41:30. If I can't beat you, don't tell me I can't use my brain. She sneered and hurriedly took off one of the women's clothes and put it on herself. Then, she dragged the two women behind the screen. After a simple treatment, she retouched her face a little. Her thick eyebrows and freckles greatly reduced her beauty. After finishing, she took a deep breath and tied the tag on one of the women's waist. Just as she was about to walk out, she paused and thought for a moment. Then, she walked back and tied one of the women up. She stuffed her mouth and moved her into the bathtub. After sealing her acupoints, she took the other woman's hairpin and pierced two of her acupoints. Seeing that the woman had woken up, she smiled and made a gesture to keep quiet. She watched as the woman's legs twitched in the water and kicked the water. When the water splashed, she walked out. I forgot to take some things. I'll go back and get them. You guys keep watch and don't let anyone in. That lady is bathing inside. She lowered her head slightly and said as she walked out casually. The two guards wanted to ask why she was alone, but when they heard her say that and the sound of bathing water coming from the room, they didn't ask. Yi Feifei walked out of their line of sight. Once she was out of their sight, she walked around in a circle. As she didn't know the way, she walked around for a while before she found the back door. Then, she quietly opened the back door and left. When she was outside, she gently exhaled and patted her chest, saying, "That scared me to death. I thought I'd be discovered." She took off her clothes and put on her own clothes. She wanted to go back to look for her master and the others. However, just as she was about to leave, a middle-aged man appeared out of nowhere and blocked her way. You have some skills. Unfortunately, this is the underground black market. No one has ever been able to escape from here. The middle-aged man said, his voice cold and emotionless. Yi Feifei's heart thumped. She looked at the middle-aged man and wanted to run away. Who knew that the other party's strength was much higher than hers? She barely moved and was caught in the next moment. Hiss. Aw. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Her hands were forcefully twisted behind her back and her body was pressed forward. The tendons in her hands seemed to be taut and the pain made her unable to move. However, she didn't expect that in the next moment, an intense pain would hit her. Crack. Her arm was forcibly twisted, and the bones cracked. She screamed, and cold sweat seeped out of her forehead. Her face also became pale. This is a lesson for you. I'll let you know what this place is. The middle-aged man's gloomy voice sounded. He did not show any mercy as he twisted her hand and dragged her inside. At the same time, he said, "If you dare to escape again, I'll break your legs." Yi Fei bit her lips and said word by word, "You caught me and broke my hand. You will regret it." That's what all the goods that enter this place say. Last time, the goods were like that. Originally, they could have been sold in perfect condition, but in the end, their hands and feet were chopped off and fed to the dire beasts. If you don't want to experience that kind of undying death, you'd better obediently become a good. The middle-aged man's cold and sinister voice was filled with bloodthirsty killing intent. He brought Yi Fei in and handed her over to two men in black. Look after her. If she escapes again, all of you will be punished. Chapter 41-31. For an underground black market to be able to establish itself as the #1 power in this city, it naturally had its own strengths. Once inside, with Yi Fei's strength, how could he escape so easily? It had to be said that she was still inexperienced, and there were many things that she hadn't seen through yet. If it was Fingzhou, he naturally wouldn't have been captured. After all, their strengths and experiences were different, and Fingzhou's thoughts and schemes were far superior to Yi Fei's. It could be said that it was expected that she would be captured. On the other side, Du Fan and Ling Shuang found out about the various powers in the city, as well as some ruffians and rogue cultivators, from the waiter. After some investigation, they locked their eyes on a few groups of people. The two of them searched all over the city, and only when the sky gradually darkened did they arrive at the place where the last group of people lived. Looking at the house in front of them, the two of them looked at each other and jumped in. They heard the sound of drinking and laughing coming from inside. What a pity, if it wasn't for that beauty in black who didn't look easy to deal with, we would have caught her and sold her as well. Our brothers would have probably made twice as much money. It's okay, next time we see if there's any good stuff, it's the same. Let me tell you, when picking these little beauties, it's best to pick them from outside the city. Only when they come here will we be unable to find them. Even if we sell them, they won't be able to find anything. This kind of work is the best, and there's no numbing. Before he could finish speaking, a long sword was placed on his neck. The cold light and the bloodthirsty aura made the man break out in cold sweat, and he didn't dare to move an inch. You sold him out. Where did they go? Du Fan asked, staring coldly at the man. Ling Shuang held his sword against the man. The sharp blade moved slightly, and a trace of blood seeped out. The man was so scared that his face turned pale. Spare me, spare me, spare me, I don't know what you're talking about. You're not talking. Du Fan opened the fan in his hand with a swish, and a sharp blade emerged from the top of the fan, which was a ghastly sight. When the other people who were drinking with him saw this, they were frightened to the point of wanting to flee. Unexpectedly, as soon as they moved, they were suppressed by a powerful pressure, to the extent that the blood and qi in their bodies were in disorder, their ears were ringing, their heads were splitting, and blood even flowed out from their mouths. For a time, miserable cries rang out continuously. Ah! I'll talk. Sold to the underground black market. Another man couldn't help but shout. Hearing the other person speak, the man held by Ling Shuang's sword hurriedly said with a trembling voice, yes, it was sold to the underground black market. Hearing this, Du Fan and Ling Shuang looked at each other. In the next moment, Ling Shuang pulled out the sword in his hand. Sword chi shot out and instantly slit the man's throat. Du Fan waved the fan in his hand and flew out in a circle. The sharp blade slit the men's necks, and one by one, they fell down. Let's talk to the master first, then go to the underground black market, Du Fan said. Just as he was about to turn and leave, he caught a glimpse of Yi Feifei's Qinquan bag from the waist of one of the men. He immediately took the Qinquan bag and left with Ling Shuang. Chapter 4132. Boss Yu looked at Fengzhou, who was resting with her eyes closed. He exchanged glances with the customers on the second floor. He wanted to ask her about it, but he felt that it was too abrupt. If he didn't ask, how long would she stay here? While thinking about it, Fengzhou suddenly opened her eyes. Seeing her suddenly open her eyes, Boss Yu, who was sitting next to her and staring at her, couldn't help but be startled. Miss, your men haven't come back for a long time. Did they not get any news? He asked carefully. Fengzhou looked at the window on the second floor. She looked at the darkening sky and said, "It's been a while, but they should be here soon." As she said that, she saw Du Fan and Ling Shuang coming up from the first floor. Master. The two of them bowed respectfully. How is it? Fengzhou asked. She stood up and straightened her red dress. I found them. They're in the underground black market. As Du Fan didn't lower his voice, the people on the second floor all heard him. They had already guessed this result, so they weren't surprised. People who enter the underground black market can't come back unless they pay a lot of money, Boss Yu said. He looked at Fengzhou and shook his head and sighed. Fengzhou raised her eyebrows. Underground black market. Hearing this name, she thought of the black market that had helped her in the beginning. She couldn't help but reveal a smile as she slowly said, I want to see what kind of place it is. How dare it be called a black market? As she spoke, she looked at the two and said, lead the way. They walked to the first floor, but stopped after 2 steps. They turned back and said, Boss Yu, sorry to disturb you today. Boss Yu walked forward and said, let me see you out. Please. Therefore, she followed them down the stairs. When she reached the first floor, she saw that they were about to leave. She couldn't help but remind them, Miss, this underground black market is not to be trifled with. It's really not to be trifled with. You'd better not go in. Otherwise, I'm afraid that you won't be able to come out once you enter. Fengzhou smiled and said, thank you. Then she walked away. The customers on the second floor followed them down. Seeing them leave, a cultivator couldn't help but say, they want to go to the black market with just 3 people. I'm afraid they'll be killed before they even enter the black market. I have a medicine to buy from the black market, a cultivator said and cupped his hands to old Shi and the others. I'll take my leave now. Seeing the cultivator leave in a hurry, one of them sneered, he's going to watch the show, right? What kind of commotion could those 3 people cause? Who knows, they might be annihilated by the black market experts in no time. What show can there be? Not to mention the cultivators below, there are 4 elders in charge of the black market. Who dares to go there and watch the show? What's more, do you think the underground black market is something you can watch casually? Another person said. He flicked his sleeves and walked away. As he walked, he shook his head and said, what a pity. I'm afraid that such a beautiful woman will not be able to return from this trip. Fengzhou's group headed towards the black market. Fengzhou stopped and said to Ling Shuang, go in through the back door and find Feifei first. Chapter 4133. Fengzhou and Du Fan entered through the main entrance and headed towards the black market. The reason why this underground black market was called an underground black market was because there were things that were not available in the outside world. Moreover, the origins of these things were mostly obtained through unscrupulous means. The transactions here were black-on-black transactions. As long as you had money, you could buy anything you wanted in this underground black market, including slaves, women, life-saving elixirs, and rare treasures. After paying the entrance fee, the two of them walked in. Because of Fingzhou's outstanding appearance and her dazzling red clothes, she looked so stunning that many people couldn't help but stop and size her up. There were even some reckless people who stepped forward and spoke frivolously. "Yo, where did this little beauty come from? His looks are really tempting." A man dressed in luxurious clothes with evil eyes walked forward and reached out his hand to lift Fingzhou's chin. However, in the next moment, a blood-curdling scream was heard. Hiss! The man in luxurious clothes with evil eyes instantly let out a blood-curdling scream. Everyone only saw that his outstretched hand had been cut off from the wrist, not to mention the fingers. The bloody severed hand fell to the ground. He covered the bleeding wound with a pale face as he screamed and retreated, looking at Du Fan in horror. Du Fan's mouth twitched. The fan in his hand was still fanning at a moderate pace. No one could have imagined that such a seemingly gentle and elegant young master, with such an ordinary-looking fan, could actually cut off the man's wrist without even blinking. It was so fast that no one could clearly see how he did it. For a moment, the people who were staring and sizing up Fingzhou immediately put away their thoughts. Only shock and horror were left in their hearts. A person who could make a move in an instant and was so fast that they couldn't see it was definitely not someone to be trifled with. Such a person, even if he had a smile on his face and looked like a gentle and noble young master, his experience told them that this person was very dangerous. "What's going on? What's going on?" A manager brought the guards over. When he saw the severed hand and blood on the ground, his eyes flashed. He looked around and finally, a guard came forward and whispered a few words in his ear. Then, the manager's gaze fell on Fingzhou and Du Fan. "Clean up the ground," the manager ordered, waving his hand to have someone clean up the ground. He also had someone bring the man whose hand had been cut off away. Then, he smiled to the crowd and said, all right. Everyone, disperse. Don't crowd around here. The transaction is about to begin. Let's quickly enter the venue." After the crowd gradually dispersed, the manager walked in front of Fingzhou with one hand behind his back. He smiled and said, "I don't care where you're from, nor do I care what abilities you have, but now that you've entered this place, no matter if you're a dragon or a tiger, you'll have to submit to me. Otherwise, we'll let you have a taste of our black market strength." Then, without waiting for them to speak, he turned and left. Fingzhou saw this and the corners of his lips curled up, a small black market with such a big attitude. Chapter 41-34. On the other side, Ling Shuang quietly snuck in from the back. She concealed her presence and used the cover of the night to explore the area. She hid in a tree and glanced down. She sensed that in addition to the guards in the open, there were also shadow guards in the dark. Moreover, there was a spiritual power in the air. In other words, even if there was no one guarding the area, the person who set up the spiritual power would know as long as there was even the slightest movement. Of course, this spiritual power was only effective against people who were weaker than him. For people like her who were stronger than him, the spiritual power would not be able to detect her existence. She glanced down and after sizing up the area, she leaped down. Instead of searching around aimlessly, it was better to capture someone and ask. She immediately made up her mind and rushed down. She grabbed a guard from behind and dragged him to the rockery. She lowered her voice and said coldly, "Speak, where is the girl who was just sent here today?" I don't know," the guard said as he reached down. When he was about to make a move, Ling Shuang realized what he was trying to do and broke his neck. She went out and dragged another one back. He still did not know. When she dragged the third one back, the guard said in a trembling voice, "I know, don't kill me, don't kill me. Speak, where is she?" Ling Shuang asked as she grabbed the guard's throat. She escaped today and was captured and locked in the woodshed. The guard fell to the ground and was lifted up by the neck. How do I get to the woodshed? Ling Shuang asked. After learning the way from the guard, she killed him. When Ling Shuang arrived at the woodshed, Yi Feifei was leaning against the corner of the wall. Her face was pale and she was holding her hand. Seeing this, she reached out and flicked her hand. 2 streams of air hit the 2 guards and she jumped in from behind. Feifei. She called and raised her hand to set up a soundproof barrier. Yi Feifei, who was sitting in a daze, saw Ling Shuang suddenly appear. Her eyes reddened. Ling Shuang, you came to save me. As soon as her voice fell, she quickly stood up. Yes, Master and Du Fan are here too. As she spoke, she saw her hand hanging limply. She couldn't help but frown and ask, "What's wrong with your hand?" "I wanted to escape today, but I was caught. That person twisted my hand and it's still broken. It hurts when I move." She continued, "They want to sell me, saying I'm the goods for tonight's trade. I can't escape. They're all stronger than me, Alright, stop talking." Ling Shuang raised her hand to stop her and said, "I'll take you to see Master." As she spoke, she took her uninjured hand, removed the soundproof enchantment, and walked out. "Who dares to break into the black market?" A deep and gloomy voice was heard. Then, a wind blade attacked from the front. Ling Shuang held Yi Feifei with one hand and helped her avoid the attack. He pushed her to the side and said, "Wait for me." As soon as he said this, the sword in his hand was drawn. He rushed forward at an extremely fast speed and hit the opponent's fatal spot. He was so fast that there was almost no pause. Yes. Chapter 4135. Chief Guard. When the guards saw Ling Shuang kill their chief guard, they couldn't help but exclaim in shock. However, they didn't dare to step forward and instead retreated. If even their chief guard couldn't defeat this woman in black, wouldn't they be courting death if they went forward? Quickly report this to the Protector Elder. In the midst of the chaos, one of the guards shouted and quickly pushed the guard beside him to report. The long sword in Ling Shuang's hand was pointed diagonally at the ground. Sharp and powerful sword chi emanated from the blade of the sword. She coldly glanced at the guards who were blocking her way. With a twist of the sword in her hand, a black figure dashed out in the next instant. The sharp sword chi also attacked the guards. A chilling murderous aura instantly filled the air, causing everyone to shiver. Whoosh! Whoosh! Clang! Hiss! Let's go! Ling Shuang turned around and looked at Yi Feifei, who was standing to the side in a daze. Oh! Yi Feifei recovered from her shock. This was the first time she had seen such a bloody scene, and it was done by Ling Shuang. For a moment, the shock in her heart was self-evident. Seeing Ling Shuang in action with her own eyes made her realize how strong and powerful she was. Seeing it with her own eyes was even more shocking than hearing it from others. You broke into my black market and killed my guards, and you want to leave just like that? A gloomy and ruthless voice sounded. At the same time, the air was filled with an oppressive aura. Visible spiritual energy surged in the air, causing Yi Feifei's blood to churn. She felt as if a huge rock was pressing on her chest, making it difficult for her to breathe. Pooh! Her blood surged, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. She couldn't withstand the powerful pressure and fainted. Feifei! Ling Shuang turned around and immediately reached out to support her. His cold eyes swept across the surroundings, but he didn't see anyone. He only heard voices. Immediately, he coldly shouted, "Coward! Come out and face your death." Ha! How arrogant! As soon as the cold voice came out, a figure rushed out like a ghost. With a flip of his hand, a destructive flow of spirit energy shot towards Ling Shuang. This speed was so fast that it could be called ghostly speed. If it was anyone else, they probably wouldn't be able to survive this palm strike. However, he was unlucky to have met Ling Shuang, who was by Fingzhou's side. Ling Shuang was someone who was personally trained by Fingzhou. Ling Shuang's strength was far from ordinary experts. When the destructive flow of spirit energy mixed with the aura of death hit them, Ling Shuang held Yi Feifei's waist with one hand and let her lean on him. He pointed his sword to the ground and stared coldly in front of him. Ling Shuang could clearly see the figure rushing towards them at an extremely fast speed in the eyes of others. She could even see the speed of the opponent's attack. Ling Shuang took Yi Feifei and quickly avoided the opponent's attack. At the same time, she raised her sword and a sword chi shot out from her hand and fiercely attacked the figure. Whoosh! Hiss! Chapter 41-36. His robes were torn and his flesh stung. Fresh blood seeped out. His face darkened, and his entire body exuded a bloodthirsty killing intent. His hands under his sleeves were clenched into fists. He stared at the woman in black who was supporting the other woman. Finally, he let out a low chuckle, which eventually turned into a hearty laugh. It's been a long time since anyone has been able to hurt me. You're very powerful. He stared at Ling Shuang, his eyes filled with bloodlust and madness. If you were to escape by yourself, it wouldn't be difficult with your strength. However, if you want to escape with the woman who was knocked out by the pressure, then no one will be able to escape. As soon as he finished speaking, Ling Shuang, who was on guard, sensed two more figures walking out from behind her. She turned slightly and glanced at them from the corner of her eyes. The two half-hidden figures fell into her sight. Peak mid-god cultivators. However, if the three of them attacked her together, it would be troublesome. She was worried that she wouldn't be able to protect Yi Feifei and let her get hurt. Since that was the case, she could only take Yi Feifei to the auction house in front. She made up her mind. Spiritual energy surged from her body, and the energy from her sword shot towards the person in front of her. At the same time, she pushed off with the tip of her foot and took Yi Feifei with her. The person dodged Ling Shuang's attack, and when he looked again, he saw her taking Yi Feifei into the air and escaping by stepping on the roof. He couldn't help but narrow his eyes and coldly shout, "Catch her!" There was no need for him to open his mouth. As soon as Ling Shuang fled with Yi Feifei, the two people in the dark had already quickly chased after them. However, what they did not expect was that the other party was actually faster than them even though they were carrying another person. Because they didn't expect her to run towards the black market's auction house, they didn't guard that direction. After all, they had hundreds of cultivators guarding the auction house. Wouldn't she be walking right into a trap if she went there? Yet, she still took Yi Feifei in that direction. Is she a cornered dog jumping over a wall? Our auction house is right in front of us. There are over 100 guards and 50 hidden guards. Elder Yuan is also there. If she escapes there, wouldn't she be walking right into a trap? The two of them chased after Ling Shuang. Because they saw that she was heading in the direction of the auction house, the two of them looked at each other and slowed down. They were a little surprised and started chatting. However, this woman's strength seems to be above ours. If she hadn't brought that unconscious woman with her, we probably wouldn't have been her match. Once an expert made a move, the truth would be revealed. She was able to injure a peak high god with a single move, so there was no need to doubt her strength. However, for a mere woman to be more powerful than them, this was a little unbelievable. What else is there to say? If we don't catch up, she will take advantage of the chaos and escape. The person who caught up saw that the two of them were still chatting and immediately looked at them with displeasure. Hearing this, one of them put on a fake smile and said, "Ha! Brother Chow, even you are no match for her. What's so strange about us not being able to catch up to her?" Moreover, Elder Yuan is guarding the auction house. Even if we don't do anything, Elder Yuan will capture her for breaking into the auction house. She won't be able to escape. It wasn't a matter of a day or two that they didn't get along well. Seeing that they were still arguing at this time, the one surnamed Xiao snorted coldly and quickly rushed forward with a flick of his sleeve. Chapter 41-37. At the front of the auction hall, a middle-aged man on the stage was giving his opening speech. The people sitting below the stage were also discussing what good items would be auctioned this time and what they wanted to buy. In a corner of the hall, Fengjiu and Du Fan were sitting side by side. They did not listen to the middle-aged man's opening speech, nor did they listen to his introduction of what items would be auctioned this time. Under the dim lighting, they were sizing up the guards and secret guards in the hall, as well as the powerful person hiding in the dark. Master, we can almost ignore the rest, but the person sitting on the second floor is very strong. In my opinion, he should be a mid-level high god. Du Fan said to Fengjiu telepathically. After all, there were people sitting on the left, right, front, and back, and all of them were cultivators with high cultivation. If they spoke, it would naturally fall into their ears. Yes, I didn't expect a mid-level high god to be in charge of a black market in the city. Fengjiu smiled and replied with his divine sense. Ling Shuang has been there for a while. I don't know if there will be any accidents. Du Fan was a little worried. With Ling Shuang's ability, he will find her. If not for the fact that they were worried that they would not be able to make a move before they found Yi Feifei and ensured that she was safe, they could directly attack her. However, if they did that, Yi Feifei would become a threat in their hands. If the other party wanted to kill her, there was no guarantee that there would not be any accidents. Right now, they could only wait here. When Ling Shuang found Yi Feifei, they would settle the score with her together. Well, let's officially start tonight's auction. The first item on the stage is... Before the middle-aged man could finish his sentence, he was shocked by the wind from a palm strike. Bang! At the same time, a woman in black rushed out from behind with another woman. Her speed was so fast that a gust of wind was stirred up around her. Catch them! Don't let them escape. Close the door. Quick! Close the door. Angry shouts could be heard from behind, and the messy footsteps of the guards could be heard. They quickly spread to the auction house and surrounded the entire auction house. The man who had been injured by Ling Shuang glared at Ling Shuang viciously. He watched as Ling Shuang brought the woman away, but when they were about to leave the auction stage, she stopped and turned around. A sinister smile appeared on his face. I told you, you can't escape. Ling Shuang looked at him. Here, looking at the auction hall surrounded by guards and secret guards, the corners of her mouth curled up imperceptibly, revealing a hint of a smile. She did not have to worry about falling into the enemy's hands, because her master. Chapter 41-38. Bang! Gotcha! A powerful pressure that could be seen with the naked eye attacked the man at a speed that was too fast for the ears to cover. In an instant, the man was pushed back several meters until he hit the wall behind him. However, this blow was not light. Even though the man was one of the four elders, his face was now pale. The blood in his body was in a mess, and blood was spilling out of his mouth. His legs were trembling, and he could not even stand. He could only use his hand to support himself against the wall that cracked because of the impact to prevent himself from falling to the ground. Pfft! The blood spilling out of his mouth could not stop the blood in his body from surging. He spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot, and his whole body trembled as he fell to the ground. Hiss! The people who saw this scene could not help but gasp. The cultivators who were sitting below the stage all stood up abruptly, and their eyes widened as they watched the scene on the stage. That was one of the four elders of the black market, and he was actually injured by a pretty boy with a fan. After Du Fan pushed the man back, he looked at Ling Shuang and asked, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." However, Fei Fei's arm was broken by them, and she fainted because of their pressure. Ling Shuang said as he looked coldly at the man who had fallen to the stage. Hearing Ling Shuang's words, Du Fan noticed that one of Yi Fei Fei's arms was not quite right. His gaze turned cold when he saw her hand and her pale face. He looked away and looked at the man who had fallen to the ground. In the next moment, his figure flashed out, and the sharp blade of the fan in his hand was aimed at the man's throat. "Those who hurt us, die. Don't be presumptuous." An aged and deep voice suddenly resounded in the auction house. The powerful pressure contained within the voice caused the hearts of the crowd to tremble. They raised their heads to look and saw a figure dashing out of nowhere. A palm wind condensed into a palm and slammed towards the man holding the fan on the stage. Bang! Ah! In that instant, everyone saw the man with the fan swinging the fan towards the elder who was sitting on the ground with his eyes wide open in shock, while his other hand quickly gathered a palm wind to meet the palm of the elder who had appeared out of nowhere. The two palms collided, and the two powerful palms collided with a bang. The old man was no match for the old man, and he staggered back and fell to the ground. At that moment, the fan in the man's hand had already slit the throat of the elder who had fallen to the ground. A mournful and unwilling scream echoed in the auction house. Shortly after, blood spurted out from the slit throat and splattered all over the ground. Ah! The cultivators below the stage originally wanted to buy some things, but they didn't expect to see such a bloody scene. Especially when the one who was killed was an elder of the black market. This made them panic. Afraid that they would be implicated, they all rushed to the door. "Hurry up and leave. Hurry up and leave. Open the door." However, the door was closed, not only on the inside, but also on the outside. Therefore, they couldn't escape at all. This was originally to prevent Ling Shuang and the others from escaping, but they didn't expect that in the end, their escape route would be blocked as well. The two elders who were chasing from behind the stage couldn't help but gasp when they saw the elder who had already died leaning against the wall with his eyes wide open and his face full of unwillingness and horror. Chapter 41-39. They looked at Du Fan and Ling Shuang in front of them in shock. After being stunned for a while, they suddenly regained their senses and shouted, "How dare you kill an elder of the black market? You guys, how dare you?" The old man who had been pushed back stood aside with an ashen face. His hands under his sleeves were tightly clenched into fists, and his heart was filled with anger. In front of so many people, he had been pushed back by a member of the younger generation. Furthermore, the other party had killed an elder of the black market. He had wanted to save someone, but he had been unable to do so and could only watch helplessly as the elder was killed in front of him. This was not only because the other party had died, but also because the elder had been killed in front of him. It was like a slap to his face, making him feel very embarrassed. "I don't care how high your cultivation level is. Today, all of you will die here." As the old man spoke, his gloomy voice carried a hint of viciousness. In the next moment, he made his move, gathering wind in his palm and attacking Du Fan. His move was vicious and carried a terrifying killing intent. "Kill them." As the old man made his move, he glanced coldly at the two elders standing behind him. His meaning was that he would deal with Du Fan, and the two elders would deal with Ling Shuang. As the old man's voice fell, the two elders regained their senses and attacked Ling Shuang, as well as Yi Fei Fei, who was being supported by her. However, just as the two of them rushed forward, Feng Zhou, who was sitting in the corner below the stage, called out softly, "Cloud-devouring beasts." Two rays of light flashed out, and the two ferocious cloud-devouring beasts roared angrily. They leapt towards the stage and raised their sharp claws, carrying the coercion of a sacred beast as they attacked the two elders. Roar! Roar! The two cloud-devouring beasts roared angrily. Their roars were loud and clear, carrying a powerful coercion that shook the eardrums of the crowd. Their powerful and robust physiques shocked the crowd in the auction house, and they could not help but cry out in alarm. Heavens! That's a cloud-devouring beast. That's a sacred beast-level cloud-devouring beast. Hiss! 2 cloud-devouring beasts have appeared at once. WHWH, where did they come from? When the people who were rushing towards the auction house saw the 2 cloud-devouring beasts leaping onto the auction stage, their eyes widened in shock and disbelief. They might still see divine beasts, but sacred beasts were extremely rare. And here, there were actually 2 of them. After recovering from their shock, some of the more attentive people couldn't help but glance at the corner of the auction house. When they saw the red-clothed lady slowly standing up from her seat, their hearts couldn't help but stagnate. The man holding the fan was the woman's attendant, and the 2 cloud-devouring beasts seemed to have appeared after the woman called out. She had such a powerful servant and 2 powerful cloud-swallowing beasts protecting her. Who was this woman? Ah! The 2 elders on the stage did not expect 2 ferocious beasts to pounce towards them. They did not have time to withdraw their attacks, nor did they have time to retreat. They could only see the 2 cloud-devouring beasts roaring angrily and clawing at them with their sharp claws. Instantly, the sound of their robes being torn, accompanied by the sound of flesh being cut, entered their ears. The pain that came from their bodies made them cry out in agony. They quickly retreated and looked in horror at the 2 cloud-devouring beasts that had stopped in front of the woman in black. Chapter 4140. Pfft. In that split second of distraction, a powerful gust of wind hit his chest and sent him flying back several meters. He snapped back to his senses and saw that the man holding the fan was staring at him coldly. The man's eyes were filled with contempt and indifference. He felt humiliated and his chi and blood surged, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Whoever kills them will be heavily rewarded by the black market. In the future, they will be honored guests of the black market. The old man shouted in a low voice and looked at the crowd who had retreated to the entrance of the auction house. There were all sorts of people amongst these people, and there were naturally many experts amongst them. However, they had all chosen to stand by and watch at this moment. If they were to lend a hand, then how could a mere few people and 2 cloud-devouring divine beasts be a match for them? Because of the old man's words, the crowd who had retreated could not help but feel tempted. If they could become honored guests of the black market, it would be a good thing. Furthermore, the black market would owe them a favor. If anything happened in the future, the black market would also help them. Thinking of this, some people clenched their fists and prepared to step forward. However, at that moment, they saw the woman in red slowly walk forward. Her gentle voice echoed in everyone's ears. Today, none of the people in charge of the black market will survive. If anyone is not afraid of death, feel free to step forward. I don't mind sending him on his way. The voice was slow and indifferent. It was so calm that there was no fluctuation in it. It was as if she was just saying the most ordinary words. However, it was this woman in red slow words that made those who wanted to take a step forward stop in their tracks. For some reason, when the voice was heard, it was so gentle but it exploded in their hearts like thunder. They trembled with fear and did not dare to take the risk. Who are you people? The old man shouted in a low voice. Fengjiu walked to the front. Ling Shuang carried the unconscious Yi Feifei and leaped down to Fengjiu's side. Looking at Yi Feifei's limp hand, Fengjiu reached out and touched it. Her eyes turned cold. Her hand had been twisted and broken, and even the bones had been displaced. This kind of twist was not as simple as breaking the bones. If she had not grasped the technique well during the treatment, and the bones were not connected properly, her hand might have been slightly twisted because of the bones in the future, and her flexibility would not be as natural as before. How dare you touch my people without knowing who we are? Fengjiu's voice had turned cold. She looked up at the old man and sneered. She said word by word, the price for touching my people is death." Just as Fingzhou finished speaking, Du Fan attacked the old man. Not to mention that his master had already given the order to kill. Even if he hadn't, he would still kill these people. Du Fan's attack changed, and he released his spiritual energy and pressure. As soon as he released his pressure, the old man's face turned pale, and his body trembled slightly. This person's strength was so strong. If it was the previous attack, he could still barely block it. But now that Du Fan's attack had changed, he did not even have the chance to fight back. This was because his entire person was suppressed by a strong force. Even if it was only for a moment, this moment was enough to determine his life and death. Xiao. Ah. Chapter 41-41. Hiss. Seeing this scene, the people at the main entrance of the auction house sucked in a breath of cold air, their faces turning pale. Their bodies involuntarily shrank back, trying to hide their presence. Another elder had died. And it was the head of the 4 great elders. This was really going to be a big deal. Among the cultivators who were shrinking back towards the main entrance of the auction house, there were 1 or 2 who had seen Fingzhou and the rest on the 2nd floor of the Medicinal Herbs Company. Seeing this scene, they were so shocked that they were dumbfounded, unable to speak for a long while. Who could tell them that what they saw was not real? Just the few of them, actually killed 2 elders of the black market, and even had 2 sacred beasts following them. This was simply too heaven-defying. They had originally thought that the girl who had been sold to the black market would at most be auctioned off, and if they wanted to get her back, they could only bid for her at a high price. Who would have thought that these 2 or 3 people would actually use such a simple and crude method to directly attack the black market, and the people of the black market were actually not their match? Who could tell them, where on earth did these abnormally powerful people come from? Just as they were in a daze, Du Fan shattered the inner elixir of the elder, and his entire body fell backwards, his body twitching a few times, blood flowing out of his mouth, as he fell into a pool of blood and breathed his last breath. After killing the elder, Du Fan turned to look at the 2 people who were being attacked by the cloud-swallowing beast. The 2 of them were already covered with cuts and bruises, and as they dodged the attacks of the cloud-swallowing beast, they looked at the dead elder on the ground. Because of the shock and fear in their hearts, they revealed many flaws in their defenses. Hence, the cloud-swallowing beast raised its sharp claws and tore off one of the people's arms. Hiss! A shrill sound rang out, and the thick smell of blood filled the air. One of them screamed, his face pale as he gritted his teeth and fled backwards. Seeing this, the other person also sent out a palm strike to block the cloud-swallowing beast's pursuit, and fled backwards as well. As for the guards and shadow guards in the open and in the dark, they had already quietly dispersed. Even the elders were not their match. How would they dare to send themselves to their doorstep to seek death? In the end, they still valued their own lives more. "Master, wait here," Du Fan said, and his figure flashed, chasing after the 2 people. If the guards and secret guards escaped, then so be it. But these 4 elders and the steward must die. This black market must disappear from the city tonight. "Ling Shuang, help her sit here," Fingzhou said, motioning for her to help Yi Feifei sit down. Yes, Ling Shuang responded and helped Yi Feifei to her seat while he supported her from the side. Fengzhou took out a medicinal pill and stuffed it into her mouth, then pinched her Renjong point. Not long after, he saw Yi Feifei slowly wake up. "Master." Yi Feifei slowly recovered. He felt a warmth in his chest, as if something was flowing. It was very comfortable. The pain also disappeared. However, when he woke up, the pain in his arm gradually became clearer. Chapter 41-42. Wrapping the cloth around her neck and holding her arms in front of her chest, he said, "That's all for now. Don't move it." "Thank you, Master." Yi Feifei looked at Fengzhou and lowered her head, saying softly, "Master, I've caused trouble for you. Fengjiu smiled, not minding it. I can go anywhere, but I can't avoid trouble. Today's matter is just a small matter. In the future, when you follow me for a long time, you will know that sometimes, even if we don't look for trouble, trouble will come knocking on our door. While they were talking in front, the cultivators who had retreated to the door were dumbfounded. They were actually chatting here. Didn't they see the bloody corpses on the stage? Didn't they see the two cloud-swallowing beasts sitting on the stage, eyeing them covetously? Not long after, Du Fan came back, holding one of the elders in his hand. But at this time, he was covered in injuries and his face was pale. He brought him in front of Fengjiu, saying, "Master, I'll keep this person. I plan to let him bring us to open the black market storehouse." Fengjiu raised her eyebrows, saying, "You go with him." Fengjiu indicated that she did not plan to go herself. "Yes." Du Fan replied, seeing that she did not object. He left with the elder. A black market that was about to disappear, they naturally had to take the things inside, otherwise, wouldn't it be convenient for others? Those who heard their words all looked at each other, some were tempted, but the moment they thought about it, they dismissed it. These few people were very strong. If they did not make a move, they would be fine, but once they made a move, they could kill the other party. Such opponents were too scary, they did not dare to take the risk, especially when they did not even know their origins. After Du Fan left, Fengjiu looked around, seeing that the guards and shadow guards had already fled, and those who came to participate in the auction had retreated to the main door. She raised her eyebrows and glanced at them, saying, "Why aren't you leaving? What are you standing there for?" Hearing this, they were stunned and somewhat in disbelief. We can leave." Fengjiu smiled and said, "I don't care who you are. Since you are not my enemy and did not oppose me, you can naturally leave." She paused and looked at the surprised expressions on their faces. She smiled and said, "However, you should know what you can say and what you can't say." Hearing this, everyone was shocked and immediately replied, we know. Let's go." She glanced at them indifferently before withdrawing her gaze. With a wave of her sleeve, the two cloud-swallowing beasts returned to her space. Seeing this, those people let out sighs of relief. They looked at each other, then one of them took out a sword and slashed the door open. As soon as the door was opened, everyone rushed out and left the place. After waiting for about half an hour, Du Fan returned, looking at Fengjiu and the rest, saying, "Master, I took everything in their storeroom, and also killed that person." None of the people in this black market were good people, who knew how many people who were sold here had died in their hands, or were sold by them. Such people, even if they died 100 times, it would not be enough. "Let's go," Fengjiu said, standing up. Chapter 41-43. Yi Feifei glanced at him and nodded, "Yes, I can." She had injured her hand, not her leg. Furthermore, her master had bandaged it and given her an elixir, so it would not be a problem for her to walk back. "I'll support you," Ling Shuang said as he supported her from the side. "Thank you." Yi Feifei thanked her as she spoke. She used her strength to support her and followed her master out. They returned to the inn under the cover of the night. After entering the inn, they asked the waiter to bring hot water. Fengjiu asked Ling Shuang to cut off Yi Feifei's sleeve. Because her arm was broken, if she took off her clothes, she would definitely twist her arm again. Therefore, cutting off her sleeve was the most appropriate choice. Hiss! Yi Feifei gasped. Because the bandages that secured her arm were untied, her arm hung down. She broke out in a cold sweat from the pain. "Your arm is swollen." Ling Shuang frowned when he saw that Yi Feifei's arm was unbelievably red and swollen. The bone was twisted and shifted. It was not treated in time, so it is natural that it is red and swollen. Fengjiu rolled up her sleeve as he spoke. He looked at Ling Shuang and then at Yi Feifei. Finally, he said, "I need to help you reconnect the bone." Ling Shuang alone is not enough. We need Du Fan to come in and help. Yi Feifei was stunned. She gritted her teeth and said, okay. If Fengjiu had been alone, she would not have thought much of exposing her arm. However, since it was Yi Feifei, it was better to let her know first so that she would not feel uncomfortable. I'll call him. As Ling Shuang spoke, she walked out and called Du Fan, who was outside. Not long after, the two of them walked in. When Du Fan saw that Yi Feifei was sitting on the chair, her dress was still intact, but one of her arms was exposed without any concealment. The woman's snow-white skin was reflected in his eyes, causing his eyes to flicker slightly. He looked down and saw that her arm was unbelievably red and swollen. He gathered his thoughts and walked forward. Master, what do you need me to do? I need to reconnect Feifei's bone. Stand behind her and hold her upper arm with both hands to prevent her from twisting and struggling from the pain, Fengjiu said and motioned for him to come forward. Yes. Du Fan responded and walked to stand behind Yi Feifei. Since he had to hold her upper arm with both hands, he had to hold her in his arms. Therefore, he reached out and wrapped his arms around her entire body. He held her upper arm with both hands. The man's scent assaulted Yi Feifei's nose, causing her ears to turn red. She felt her entire body heating up, and her whole body was uncomfortable. Especially when her bare arms were hugged by his hands, she couldn't help but lower her eyes. She told herself over and over in her heart that Du Fan was helping her with the bone setting. Even if he hugged her like this, it was no big deal. Fengjiu nodded when he saw that Yi Feifei's posture was correct. He carefully lifted Yi Feifei's arm and said to Ling Shuang, hold her here. Yes. Ling Shuang stepped forward and held Yi Feifei's hand as instructed, keeping it straight. Yi Feifei could not help but feel nervous when they held her entire arm. She could not help but grit her teeth when she felt the pain in her arm. She tried her best not to move. Chapter 41-44. Yi Feifei's face grew paler and paler. She didn't make a sound. She only clenched her teeth, afraid that she would cry out if she let go of her hand. Yi Feifei's face grew paler and paler. She didn't make a sound. She only clenched her teeth, afraid that she would cry out if she let go. Because of the fracture of her arm, in addition to the dislocation of the bone, her arm was also red and swollen due to the bleeding and coagulated blood. Fengjiu helped her set the bone back and carefully touched the bone. After making sure that the bone had been set in its original position, he held her hand with one hand and pulled it slightly to straighten and level her hand. Ling Shuang, hold here and don't move. Don't pull your arm. Just hold it like this and keep it flat. Fengjiu instructed and let Ling Shuang take over her hand. Ling Shuang responded and did as she said. He watched as his master carefully touched Yi Feifei's arm. Then, he gathered spiritual power in his palm and spread the blood away from her arm. Du Fan looked at Yi Feifei and saw that she was clenching her teeth so hard that her lips were bleeding, but she did not make a sound. However, her other hand was tightly gripping the corner of her clothes. Because she was trying to control herself, the veins on her hand were bulging. It was obvious how much pain she was enduring. Fengjiu applied the ointment that he had prepared on the side onto Yi Feifei's arm. Then, he used a bamboo board to fix her arm and bandaged it carefully. He did not raise his head and said, I'll fix this arm for you. Don't move it, in case it moves again. He did not hear any sound for a while. He raised his head and saw that she had fainted from the pain. Her small face was pale. He said to Du Fan, carry her to the bed. Be careful, don't hurt her hand. Okay. Du Fan responded and watched as Fengjiu finished bandaging her arm. Then, he carefully carried Yi Feifei to the bed. Fengjiu walked to the table, wrote a prescription, and handed it to Ling Shuang. Go buy 3 sets of medicine and boil it for her, one at a time. Yes, Ling Shuang replied. He took the prescription and walked out. After being busy for most of the night, Fengjiu let out a sigh of relief. He glanced at Yi Feifei on the bed and said to Du Fan, "Go wash up and rest. I'll keep an eye on things here." Du Fan nodded and left. He did not return to his room, but went downstairs to instruct the waiter to prepare some dishes and rice before returning to his room to wash up. After taking a bath and changing into a new set of clothes, he walked out of the room and was greeted by the waiter. "Young master, the food is ready. Would you like to have it sent to your room or eat on the first floor?" The waiter asked with a smile. Du Fan paused, thought for a moment, and said, "Let's eat on the first floor. Wait for us to go downstairs before serving the food, so it won't get cold." As he spoke, he walked to Fengjiu's room and knocked on the door. "Master." Fengjiu opened the door and looked at Du Fan, asking, "What's wrong? You haven't had dinner yet." "I had the waiter prepare the food on the first floor." As Du Fan spoke, he glanced at the room and said, "She'll be fine resting in this inn." "Master, you should go downstairs and eat first." Hearing this, Fengjiu nodded. "All right." He closed the door and went downstairs with him. When the waiter saw them go downstairs, he went to the kitchen to serve the food and wine. After serving the food, he left. Chapter 41-45. Fengjiu took a sip of his wine and smiled. "If we can't leave, then we'll just have to wait for them to come knocking on our door. The guards at the black market were not killed, they will go back and report. As for the owner of the black market, let's see if he has a death wish." She paused for a moment, then said to Du Fan, "Did you ask the kitchen to prepare something for Feifei to eat? She should wake up in the middle of the night. She will need to drink her medicine later, so we have to let her eat something." "Yes, I asked the waiter to ask the kitchen to prepare some porridge," Du Fan replied. Fengjiu smiled. "You're so careful, you know what to do even without me telling you." As he spoke, he looked at him teasingly, then picked up his chopsticks and ate some food. Du Fan heard this and smiled. "I've been by Master's side for many years, I know what to do." With just one look, he knew what his master's teasing gaze meant. It seemed that his master liked to watch a good show. Yes, watch the show between him and Yi Feifei. "Master." Ling Shuang came back with the medicine. Seeing them on the first floor, she called out. Du Fan stood up and said, "I'll go prepare the porridge. You accompany Master to eat." "No need, I'll go," Ling Shuang said. Du Fan stepped forward and took the medicine, saying, "I've already eaten." "You haven't eaten yet. Sit down and accompany Master to eat. The food was just served not long ago." As soon as his voice fell, he didn't wait for her to say anything and walked towards the kitchen. "Let him do as he pleases. Sit down and eat." Fengjiu gestured. Ling Shuang sat down and said, "Master, the people outside are already spreading the news about the black market. There are also many people watching outside the inn. Don't worry about them." Fengjiu did not care. Seeing this, Ling Shuang did not say anything else, but picked up the rice and ate. In the middle of the night, Yi Feifei woke up. Ling Shuang brought her porridge. After she ate, he brought her a bowl of medicine and said, "Drink this medicine later." Yi Feifei looked at the medicine on the side. It was black and smelled strongly of medicine. Seeing that the medicine was still hot, she was not in a hurry to drink it. Instead, she leaned against the headboard. Fainting was one thing, but now that she woke up, she felt a sharp pain in her arm. Even though it was the second half of the night, she couldn't sleep at all. "Ling Shuang, will the people from the black market take revenge if we stay here overnight?" Yi Feifei asked worriedly. "Master is here. Don't worry." Ling Shuang slept in his clothes on the soft couch and said, "Don't forget to drink the medicine. It can help you recover. Besides, Du Fan made it for you." Hearing this, Yi Feifei was stunned. She wanted to ask more, but saw that Ling Shuang had already closed his eyes and was asleep. So, she did not disturb him. She looked at the steaming medicine and thought of Ling Shuang's words. Her heart skipped a beat. When the medicine was not so hot, she picked it up with her uninjured hand, held her breath and drank it in one gulp. Because the 4 elders of the black market were killed in one night, the news spread quietly even though Fengjiu had ordered them not to spread it. Almost all the powers in the city knew about this shocking incident that night. They also knew that the people who destroyed the black market were staying in the inn in the city and had not left. Of course, some people kept an eye on the inn, but no one dared to act rashly. Chapter 41-46. But what? Another person asked, his gaze landing on him. But this cloud-swallowing beast, and hearing your description, I have a faint guess. The middle-aged man said, his face deep in thought. Hearing this, the few of them looked at each other, saying, if you have something to say, just say it. That middle-aged man looked at them, took a deep breath, and slowly said, you should have heard of the ghost Dr. Fengjiu, right? When these words came out, the few of them couldn't help but widen their eyes in shock. You mean, they are the ghost Dr. Fengjiu's people? The middle-aged man shook his head, no, but after hearing what you said, I feel that the ghost Dr. Fengjiu is here, and he is the master of those people you mentioned, the beautiful woman in red. Hiss. The few of them sucked in a breath of cold air. Today, a few of their old friends were sitting down and discussing, guessing that these people might be aristocratic figures from some place. But they didn't expect to hear him say that the person who destroyed the black market was the ghost Dr. Fengjiu's people. This can't be right. Our place is considered a more remote town, why would the ghost Dr. Fengjiu come here? Moreover, there aren't many people by his side, just 2 or 3 people, and that little girl who was caught by the black market is also very weak, there's no way she could be the ghost Dr. Fengjiu's people. They were shocked, and found it inconceivable. That legendary figure, that person who caused such a huge commotion in this world, actually came to their city. They knew that the ruler of this world was one of the generals under the ghost Dr. Fengjiu. That kind of person, in their eyes, was too high to reach, too far to reach, so it was impossible for him to appear in front of them. It was also because of this, when they heard that the ghost Dr. Fengjiu was here, their first reaction was disbelief. This was really too hard to believe. If it wasn't for them, who do you think would be able to destroy those people from the black market with just a few people? Who would have the guts to stay in an inn in the city as if nothing had happened after destroying the black market? The middle-aged man glanced at them and sighed. Fortunately, you didn't get involved in this matter at that time. Hearing this, the few of them were shocked. Some of them had wanted to step out and help after hearing the conditions offered by the black market elder, but now, they were scared. A chill rose from the soles of their feet and went straight to their hearts, making them shiver involuntarily. The air seemed to have frozen, and there was no sound or movement for a long time. They sat there quietly, trying to calm their emotions. After a while, someone asked, do you think the owner of the black market has guessed their identities? Hearing this, they paused, looked at each other, and said, it's possible. They've probably guessed it, so there's no movement. Otherwise, how could it be so quiet at this time, and nothing has happened? The middle-aged man said, the black market's power is quite big, but if the ghost Dr. Fengjiu wants to destroy it, it's really a simple matter. The few of them talked, and waited until dawn to see if there was any movement in the city. Chapter 41-47. The owner of the black market, who had brought the guests and the gifts, looked uneasy and nervous. When he heard the news, he had ordered his men to investigate their backgrounds. He did not expect them to be the ghost Dr. Fengjiu himself. He pondered for an entire night before deciding to make a personal trip to the inn to ask for forgiveness. When he arrived at the entrance of the inn, he personally asked, have the guests here woken up? The innkeeper was a little flustered when he saw such a large group of guests. However, he calmed down when he heard the owner's question. The other party addressed the guests upstairs as distinguished guests, so they shouldn't make things difficult for them. Therefore, after a while, he said respectfully, "Those guests went to bed very late last night, so they haven't woken up yet." The owner of the black market paused and said, "All right then. I will wait here for them to wake up." As he spoke, he gestured for his men to wait outside while he led a middle-aged man into the inn and sat down in a corner. The innkeeper did not dare to be negligent. He hurriedly served them tea before retreating. The commotion downstairs did not alarm Fingzhou and the rest. Only Ling Shuang had woken up early to help Yi Feifei brew medicine. He saw the owner of the black market sitting on the first floor. When the innkeeper saw Ling Shuang, he went over to the owner of the black market and said, "This lady works for the lady in red." The owner of the black market, who was looking at Ling Shuang and secretly guessing, immediately stood up and hurriedly called out, "Miss Ling Shuang." Ling Shuang stopped in his tracks and looked at the middle-aged man who was walking over. The owner of the black market cupped his hands and said, "I am Chu Xiong, the owner of the black market. When I found out that one of my subordinates had offended you, I am here to apologize." Hearing this, Ling Shuang glanced at him and said, "My master hasn't woken up yet." With that, she walked towards the kitchen. Chu Xiong paused and looked at the innkeeper beside him. He asked, "Why is she in the kitchen?" This young lady was brewing medicine for another young lady upstairs. When that young lady came back, she was injured quite badly. Her hand was twisted and displaced. The shopkeeper said softly. Chu Xiong paused. Thinking of what his subordinates had done, he sighed helplessly. He had heard that the ghost doctor Fingzhou was extremely protective of his own people. His subordinate had broken her hand and injured her. He was afraid that she would not let it go so easily. Thinking about how the black market storehouse had been emptied, he smiled bitterly to himself. This time, not only did many of his subordinates die, the treasures in the storehouse were also taken away. This was a double loss. If it was someone else, he would definitely take it back. However, this person was the ghost doctor Fingzhou, so he could only swallow this loss. He returned to the table in the corner and sat down to wait. When it was close to noon, he saw a woman in red come down from the second floor while yawning. Looking at the beautiful woman in red, he immediately stood up nervously. Was this the ghost doctor Fingzhou? Was this the legendary ghost doctor Fingzhou? She was truly, indescribably beautiful and peerless. The moment he saw her, he realized that the most attractive thing about her was not her beautiful face, but the noble aura that emanated from her body. The noble aura that she exuded from her every movement carried a hint of casualness and laziness. It was inexplicably hard for people to shift their gazes away. Chapter 41-48. He bowed deeply, raising his hands high before slowly kneeling down. His forehead rested on his hands, and he did not get up. Fengzhou had just woken up, and even though she had washed up, her face was still sleepy. Her hand that was yawning paused, and her clear eyes narrowed. She lazily leaned against the railing of the stairs, looking at the middle-aged man kneeling on the ground. When the middle-aged man behind saw his master bow so deeply, he quickly stepped forward and respectfully knelt behind her. Chu Xiong? She lazily asked, her mind spinning. Looking at the person kneeling by the stairs, she was just about to ask who he was, when she saw Du Fan walk out from the room and stand behind her. Master, it's the master of the black market. Du Fan said, gently fanning himself with the fan in his hand, his gaze looking at the person kneeling below. Oh. The master of the black market. Fingzhou raised her eyebrows, looked at the person below, and asked, "What are you doing here?" As she spoke, she slowly walked down step by step. Hearing her words, Chu Xiong panicked, and said, "Ghost doctor, I'm here to ask for forgiveness. I didn't discipline my subordinates well, please forgive me, Ghost Doctor. Fengjiu walked past him, and sat down at a table on the first floor. She slowly said, "It's normal for the underground black market to do some shady business, but this kind of kidnapping and trading of women is not something I'm used to seeing, especially when you're touching my people." Chu Xiong's forehead was covered in cold sweat. When he heard her words, he felt a strong pressure pressing down on him, as if as long as she willed it, he would be crushed to death here. He didn't even dare to breathe loudly. He held his breath, his heart in his throat. Even if the other party spoke casually, he was still scared out of his wits. He immediately said, "Ghost Doctor, please investigate. This matter, I really didn't know about it. In the future, I will discipline my subordinates well, and they won't do it again." The shopkeeper brought the waiter to personally serve them food and wine, then respectfully retreated, not daring to look at the two people still kneeling on the ground. Fengjiu poured a cup of wine and took a sip. After a while, she said, "Go back. Discipline your subordinates well. If they do it again, it's one thing if I don't know, but if I know, I won't let you off so easily like this time." Yes, thank you, Ghost Doctor. I will discipline my subordinates well, and they won't do it again," he hurriedly said. When he felt the pressure covering him disappear from the top of his head, he took a deep breath and hurriedly stood up to leave. He didn't dare to stay any longer and quickly left with his people. Du Fan sat down at the side and asked, "Master, did you spare their lives because you emptied the black market storehouse?" Fengjiu smiled and said, "That was only one of the reasons. Secondly, he didn't kill them again, and even came to ask for forgiveness. No matter what his intentions were, since he dared to come and ask for forgiveness, then his crime doesn't warrant death. Moreover, we don't have any deep hatred with him. Killing the 4 elders under him, and emptying his black market storehouse, can be considered teaching him a lesson." After all these years, she had seen too many things, and her temperament had changed. Sometimes, there were some things, or some people, that didn't warrant death. She was willing to spare their lives, and give them a chance. Hearing this, Du Fan smiled, at least he knows his place.